Hey there, baby dolls. Welcome to 1 o'clock. We're having a gorgeous jam.
We are. There's our sponsors. Well, not yet. They haven't
Not
returned
yet,
on
but they
any
will.
Of,
Of course they bloody will.
They have to.
Hey, Brown Lewis. I have got a little story to tell you right
What?
now. I've got recently I told a story about the drunkest auntie, Robin. I also have a story about one of the drunkest aunties I've ever met in my life, and her name also starts with an R. It's Ruth.
Okay.
Gorgeous, gorgeous Ruth. Now, I did a show once with the wonderful, wonderful comedian Dave Warnicky. Now, Dave Warnicky and I are doing a show for the Melbourne International Comedy Festival next year. We just spoke about it yesterday.
What,
yeah.
like a split bill?
No, it's not.
Thank
Why
God.
did you sound so upset?
Because why wouldn't you do your show?
I'm going to do both.
Okay, great. Okay, continue. I would just be.
Actually, no, don't worry about it. That's the end. Have a good weekend, everyone.
If you had said, instead of doing my own show, I'm just going to do a split bill, I would fucking flip this
No, I'm
table.
doing my show. I'm going to do one. Why the Long Face? I'm going to do that. And
Great.
I'm also going to do a show that Dave Warnicky and I did together called Dave Warnicky Dates the Entire Audience. I play his manager every night. It's an interactive show. It's a lot of bloody fun.
That sounds great.
We had a great time doing
I'll
it.
date Dave.
We did it 10 years ago, and so we're going to bring it back. We're going to bring it
That's
back,
awesome.
right? Yeah, it's going to be lots of fun. Anyway, so Dave Warnicky and I ended up in a wonderful place called Perth in Western Australia.
I have
Wonderful
heard of
part of
it.
the world, right? And we had this tech called Ruth. Now, Ruth was a drunk lady, and we loved Ruth so much, but Ruth did not like Dave Warnicky one bit. She didn't like
really?
Dave- yeah,
Why?
yeah.
He's so
She liked
lovable.
me because she thought I was an actor, but she hated comedians. So she was like, oh my God, comedians always talking to me about comedians.
Well, that's insulting that she didn't think you were a comedian.
Yeah, it's very rude actually. And one time, Fiona O'Loughlin came into the show and she was late, and Fiona came in really late, and didn't make a scene of it or anything. Just came in a little bit late. She'd just done her show, and Ruth looked at me and just went like mimed, like she's had a drink.
Oh,
Like just like,
she
yeah,
wouldn't have
just
been
like
wrong
going,
though, would she?
no, she wouldn't be wrong. But yeah, Ruth said to me after the show, she's like, oh my God, that fucking Fiona O'Loughlin just walks in. And I was like, she's actually a friend of mine. Like Ruth had
She's my
no
best
idea. Like, why else do you think she's here? And we had a great time. Anyway, one time Ruth was talking to me and she goes, oh, like I just came back from Doha before I did this run. And I came back to my kids' place. I've been on a tour with the Wiggles.
Okay.
I was like, oh, okay, right, okay. And she goes, yeah, I came back.
In
and
Doha?
In Doha, apparently.
Okay.
And she goes, my kids were having a party at home. And I was really tired when I got back from the airport, but I thought, I'm going to have some fun. So she
so
stayed up,
grown kids.
yeah, and outlasted the kids. And everyone by
always
the
do.
end were calling her Doha Ma, Doha Ma.
That seems racist.
Right, but she was having the best time. Like, she was so much fun,
Ruth
right?
would.
Always having a great time. She had an esky of drinks
Next to the
backstage, and she would just be drinking those.
Yeah.
A comedian took them from
What?
her one night. Just took
Oh, this
one
is
of
why
her.
she hates
yeah,
you.
one of her Ruskies or Smirnoff, whatever the hell she was having. Someone took one night, and she was so upset about it.
Yep.
She was so mad.
No, I'm just going to toilet. I'm
Oh yeah,
busting.
yeah. Toilet girl, toilet girl, toilet girl, toilet girl. Nah, toilet girl, toilet girl.
Hey, Sammy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so
Someone-
Doha Ma, right?
and
Doha
someone stole
Ma.
her Rusky.
Someone stole her Ruskies, and she was really upset about it. And she put up a big sign saying, fuck off, basically. Just fuck off. I think she actually just wrote fuck off. So upset.
Wow.
That night,
Where's
I went
Ruth from?
Melbourne.
Okay.
I went to the artist bar with some people that night. Dave did not come.
He wasn't invited.
Wasn't invited. And Ruth was there having a great time. And Damien Callanan, wonderful comedian Damien
Loved
Callanan,
him.
walked in, and Ruth was like, oh God. I was like, you all right? And she goes, yeah, I saw a show in Melbourne recently. I heckled the shit out of his show. And I was like, you're a tech. Like, what are you doing just like heckling a comedian show? She's like, oh God. Anyway, she bailed me up all night. The next day I'm with Dave, and we go to the show, see Ruth. And Ruth is like, great to see you last night, Sammy. I was like, great to see you. And she goes, I'm getting so many texts. So many people are saying to me, can I get drugs? Can I get drugs? Why are people just assuming that I have drugs? And I was like, Ruth, last night you told everyone that you had drugs. And she was walking around to people going,
I've got
You want
drugs.
drugs? You want drugs?
What?
I've got drugs. Yeah, she went around all night telling people that. Anyway, so flash
she have
forward.
drugs?
I don't think she had drugs. I think she was just making it up.
Funny thing to make up.
Funny thing. Very
It's actually
funny
a really
practical
drunk
joke.
auntie.
And then a little bit later, Dave and I did the show in Melbourne. But it was like 2 years later. So Dave and I did another show 2 years later.
Same concept.
Different concept. And we're having a great time doing this show in Melbourne, right?
Yeah.
We're at this venue called the Tuxedo Cat that doesn't exist anymore, but we're at the venue called the Tuxedo Cat. And there's a guy called Ryan Bird there. And Ryan Bird did a show that same year that we were doing it. And he was now at the same venue as us. And we're like, oh my God, remember Perth? And he was like, remember Ruth? And I was like, oh my God, yeah.
love her.
We look around.
No.
Ruth is there, right? And he goes, Ruth came to my show tonight. And I was like, oh my God, wow. And Ruth like is looking at me and she goes, oh. And she walks up to me. And in Perth as well, she'd been kicked out of her Airbnb because she was so fucked. Like she was like, yeah.
Oh, so she's just a rough lady.
She's a rough lady. And she comes up to me and she goes, oh my God, Sammy. This is wild that I'm seeing you right now because I just want to apologise for how mental I was during that time. It was a rough time of my life.
Okay.
And I wasn't quite right.
And is Dave Warnocky standing right next to you?
No, and I just want to say, oh my God, I was doing a lot of drugs back then.
Oh, she was. She did have
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
She was
All over it.
She was telling the truth and she was lying.
And then I saw Ryan after and I was like, oh my God, Ruth just apologised to me. And he goes, right. I was like, why? And he goes, she just heckled the shit out of my show and then asked me if I wanted to buy drugs. Yes, isn't that amazing? That's Ruth.
Well, she's a leopard.
I kind of...
And she cannot
She
change
cannot.
her spots.
And she never should. Is it a leopard that has spots or a cheetah? Oh. I always get those two confused.
It's a leopard. Isn't it?
I don't know.
Well,
Call in, right in. We'd love to hear from you.
Any zoologists out there?
Any zoologists out there that we'd love to hear from them?
I had a lady in my podcast once. Not a podcast. It was a comedy show.
Different thing. That's okay.
And I said this bit about Tina Arena, and she had been quiet the whole show.
Right.
And she said, she yelled out at the top of her lungs. She said, "Did you watch her sing that at the Logies?" And it's because it was quite like a serious bit.
Right. Yeah.
And no one had yelled at all. And this was like 45-minute mark.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
nearing the end. And she yelled out. And when I looked at her, she looked so stunned that she'd yelled it out.
Shocked herself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her husband, he just held her hand, Mr. Sunday Movies.
Yeah.
Yes. He just held her hand, looked at her and was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?"
What are you doing, the wonderful Claire Tonti?
I love her so much.
I got so excited last night when I was on a wonderful website called Instagram.com.
Okay.
Look it up. I see my good friend Bron is doing a show with Claire Tonti.
Yeah, I love her.
Oh,
she's so
my
great.
God.
Because she came to my show and
Yeah.
she, there's so many shows that she can go
Yeah.
and see. And James came and saw, they both came together, husband and wife.
Yeah.
And when I saw them in the audience, I was like, wow, that's so lovely that they came to
Yeah.
my show. And she got so into it that she yelled that out halfway. And then she said afterwards, she was like, "I'm so sorry. I never yell out. I've gone to see that many comedy shows.
Yeah.
I've never once yelled out." But I loved that.
She's such a beautiful person.
Yeah, I
They're
love
both
her.
wonderful. They're both such wonderful
She didn't yell
people.
out in your show.
She didn't.
Did anyone yell out in your show?
My mum did. Every goddamn night.
My mum used to yell out in my shows.
My mum yelled out every goddamn night. Mum tripped on so many of my punchlines and she surprised me by coming the day earlier. So this would be a wonderful
Where'd she
surprise.
stay? Just a hotel.
Oh, at her friend Maureen's. Moors.
Okay.
But
Shout out to Maureen.
Shout out to Maureen, very drunk auntie. But yeah, she shouted out the night before and I was like, oh my God, and then did it again the next night.
Well, she must have thought, and this is why I think any heckler does it, any of it, they think they're helping.
They think they're always helping.
So my mum used to yell out in mine and I had to have a very stern word with her.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's actually really unhelpful.
Yeah, it is unhelpful.
I
Don't
can
shout out,
see
guys.
why you think it's helpful.
Yeah. But just don't.
Just don't. So I had said to Mum, and it was very awkward and she didn't talk to me for a bit. I had said, "Mum, it's just when people know that you're here,
Yes.
it changes
The dynamic completely. Yeah.
And also if I tell a joke that you're in the joke, you
Yeah.
feature in it, they'll constantly be looking at you to see if this is upsetting you or whether
Yeah.
you're liking it or whether
Yeah.
it's stressing you out or
Yeah.
anything. So it's
Just
like you're
hush
not
those
there.
sweet lips
You
of
just
yours.
laugh
Stop
if you
flapping
think
those
it's
goddamn
funny.
lips.
Yeah, you think she came to one of my shows once, my mum, and she was so drunk. She was nervous for me. Like, it was my first like feature spot, like a headline spot at
Yeah.
Sit Down Comedy Club in Brisbane, and it was my first 30-minute spot, and I was quite nervous. I was like making sure that I was going to get it right.
Yeah.
And she. Mum had drunk an entire bottle of wine beforehand because she was so nervous for me. And then when we got there, I said, well, we went through the green room. This was just after COVID, and everyone had to check in, a QR code or whatever. And I said, when we walked in, I said, the guy who owns it, Fidelity, beautiful Fidelity, I said, my mum's coming in. Is that okay? And he said, oh, of course, please come in. And he said something nice about me to my mum, and she kind of just like stared at him. And he said, you just have to check in on a QR code.
Yeah.
And my mum looked at it and she goes, I'm not fucking doing that. I was like, oh my
I love that so much.
And then she heckled throughout the whole thing. Yelled
Wow.
If I talked about Lucas, I'd say, oh, Lucas did this thing. Mum go, oh, don't leave him alone. He's beautiful. I was like, oh my God.
It's going to be a long show.
Or if I said a joke and it landed, and people laughed, Mum said this. That was very clever, Bronny.
Oh my God, but I'm not checking in.
There's like 200 people in the audience, and my mum who just like was half of my act. And I was like, oh my God, this is so unhelpful. But I had to have a conversation with her the next day. I was like, Helen, Mum, I love you so much. Thank you for supporting me. I love how much you want this to work for me. However, it's so important you don't call out or make people know that you're in the audience, because it changes it.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Bron, we're going to have to wrap up because we have no minutes left on our recording device
Okay.
right now. Hey, I love you. Mum, if that is your real name, stop heckling. Have a wonderful weekend, Bron.
Cheers.
Cheers.